ever get that feeling like you're trying to learn something new, maybe something about how our brains work or, how memory works, and it just feels like too much information, like you're drowning in it. You just want a shortcut to understanding, right?
Right. It's like you're looking at this huge, complex map, and you just want someone to point out the important landmarks, the key things you need to know.
Well, that's what we do here on the deep dive. We take a complex topic and break it down so it's easy to understand. And today, we're going to be talking about working memory and how it impacts learning,
Specifically, we'll be diving into this article you gave us called Reconceptualizing Working Memory in Educational Research.
which is a topic I think everyone can relate to. I mean, we all use our memory every single day. And this article, well, it really challenges some of the traditional ways we think about memory, how it actually works.
Yeah, it suggests that our understanding of memory is kind of, well, evolving, and there's a lot more to it than we might realize.
So before we get too deep into it, how about we start with some basics? Working memory, essentially, is like a mental workspace where we actively manipulate information.
Right. It's not just about storing information. It's about using it, transforming it.
Exactly. We pull information from our short-term memory, and we also draw on our long-term memory. It's like this bridge connecting what we're thinking about right now with everything we've learned in the past.
And the capacity of this working memory, like how much information you can hold and work with at a time, that's what we call working memory capacity, or WMC.
And the article really emphasizes the importance of WMC. It suggests that it might be one of the most important factors in how well we learn.
Which is something to think about, because sometimes we might see someone struggling to learn something, and we assume it's because they're not motivated, or maybe they're just not smart enough.
Right. But this research suggests that maybe their working memory is just wired a little differently.
Yeah, and understanding that can be a game changer because it shifts the focus to how we can support learners better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that in mind, let's start with the model of working memory that's been around for a while, the one you see in a lot of educational research.
Yeah, that's Baddeley's multi-component model. It's been really influential, and it gives us a good starting point.
So break it down for us. What are the key components of this model?
Well, it proposes that working memory is made up of several distinct but interacting parts. The first part is the central executive. Think of it like the CEO of your mental workspace.
So it's the boss, the one in charge.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It controls your attention, it coordinates the other parts of working memory, and it decides what information is important to focus on at any given moment.
Okay, so that's the central executive.
Next
What
thing
else?
we have what were initially called slave systems. These systems handle specific types of information.
Got it. So like different departments in a company.
Right. You have the phonological loop, which processes verbal and auditory information, like when you repeat a phone number to yourself.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
And then there's the visual spatial sketchpad, which handles visual and spatial information, like when you picture the layout of your house.
Okay, so one for sounds and words, one for images and space. That makes sense.
And more recently, Baddeley added another component, the episodic buffer. This acts as a temporary storage space where information from all the other components can be integrated. It's like a meeting room where everything comes together.
Uh-huh. And the episodic buffer, it connects to your long-term memory, right?
Right. It helps you form those chunks of information, those episodes that you can then store in your long-term memory.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this works. So this multi-component model has been really helpful, especially in educational research. The article talks about how it's helped us understand learning in areas like reading and writing.
Absolutely. And language, math, even multimedia learning.
Right. It's given us a good framework for thinking about learning difficulties and interventions. But the article also mentions that there are some limitations to this model. What are some of the things that might miss or oversimplify?
Well, one criticism is that it doesn't fully account for the role of attention. I mean, attention is obviously crucial for any type of learning.
Yeah, if you're not paying attention, you're not going to learn much, no matter what your working memory is like.
Exactly. And it can also be a little too focused on separate storage components. It doesn't always emphasize the connections between working memory and long-term memory.
Right, it's like looking at the individual parts without always seeing the whole integrated system.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And that's where these alternative frameworks come in. They offer different ways of thinking about working memory that might capture those missing pieces.
Okay, well, let's explore those alternative paths. What's the first one we should consider?
The first one is the attentional control model, which is associated with researchers like Engel and Kane. This model shifts the focus away from separate storage components and emphasizes the role of domain general executive attention.
Okay, hold on. What exactly does domain general mean?
It means that this attentional ability isn't specific to the type of information you're working with, whether it's words, pictures, or numbers. It's the same underlying ability to maintain focus on your goals and ignore distractions.
So it's not about having separate compartments for different types of information, but about how well you can filter out the noise.
Exactly. And this model suggests that what we measure as working memory capacity is actually a reflection of how good you are at controlling your attention.
Like having a really strong mental spotlight, you can focus in on what's important and tune out everything else.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And there's a lot of evidence to support this view. For example, studies using dichotic listening tasks, where you hear different messages in each ear.
Oh yeah, I've heard of those.
People with lower working memory capacity, they're more likely to hear their name being spoken in the ear they're supposed to be ignoring.
Because you can't filter it out.
Right. And in word list recall tasks, people with lower WMC are more easily disrupted by new lists of words. It's like their mental workspace gets cluttered more easily.
So it's not just about forgetting, it's about the intrusion of irrelevant information.
Exactly. And another interesting finding is that when you increase the cognitive load, like giving people a second task to do, it actually affects people with higher WMC more.
That's counterintuitive. Why would that be?
The idea is that people with higher working memory are actively using their attentional control to fight off distractions. So when you add another demand, it strains their resources more.
Ah, because they're working harder to stay focused.
Exactly. So the attentional control model really highlights the importance of attention in working memory.
Okay, so that's one alternative view. What's the next one we should explore?
The next one is Cowan's embedded process model. And this one takes a completely different approach. It says that working memory isn't a separate system at all. It's actually just an activated subset of your long-term memory.
Wait, so there's no separate short-term storage? It's all just part of long-term memory.
That's what Cowan proposes. He argues that within your long-term memory, there are two levels of activation. First, you have a large pool of long-term memory representations that can be activated.
So things you've learned that aren't in your immediate focus, but you can access them if you need to.
Yeah, like bringing a file up on your computer. And then within that activated subset, there's a smaller, more focused area, the focus of attention. This is where you actively process information.
And this focus of attention, that's what has the limited capacity.
Right. You can only hold a few items at a time. So it's like having a few files open on your computer that you're actively working on, while a bunch of other files are minimized in the background.
Okay, I think I'm getting it. So there's no separate phonological loop or visual spatial sketchpad. It's all just activated long-term memory.
Precisely. And Cowan emphasizes that working memory includes both what's in your focus of attention and the broader activated information that's just outside of it.
Wow, these are some really different ways of thinking about working memory. So the article then goes on to look at how these different models explain specific academic skills, like reading. How does the traditional multi-component view explain the link between working memory and reading?
Well, it focuses on the role of the phonological loop, that part of working memory that handles sounds and words. The idea is that when you're reading, you need to hold on to the words you've already read so you can make sense of the sentences.
Right, so you can follow the story or understand the argument.
Exactly. And studies have shown that people with better phonological loop capacity tend to have better reading comprehension.
Okay, so what about the attentional control model and the embedded process model? How do they explain the link between working memory and reading?
The attentional control model says it's not just about holding words in your mind, it's about maintaining focus while you're reading, being able to ignore distractions and stay on track.
Which makes sense because if you're constantly getting sidetracked, you're not going to comprehend what you're reading.
Right. And this model points to the difficulties that people with ADHD often have with reading.
Because they have trouble with attention.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the embedded process model, it suggests that reading difficulties might arise from problems activating the relevant long-term memory representations.
So not just remembering the words, but connecting them to your existing knowledge.
Right, like being able to understand the meaning of the words and how they fit together.
Okay, that's really interesting. So 3 different models, 3 slightly different explanations for why reading can be challenging. What about writing? How do these models view the role of working memory in writing?
The multi-component model says that writing involves multiple components of working memory. The visual spatial sketchpad is involved in planning and visualizing what you want to write.
Like having a mental picture of the structure of your essay or story?
Yeah, exactly. The phonological loop helps you translate your thoughts into words, and the central executive coordinates everything.
So it's a very complex process involving different parts of working memory.
Right. And research shows that people with higher verbal working memory capacity tend to write more complex and grammatically correct sentences.
Makes sense. But what about the attentional control model and the embedded process model? What do they have to say about writing?
The attentional control model, again, emphasizes the importance of attention. It says that good writers are able to focus on their writing and ignore distractions.
Which can be really hard, especially with all the notifications and things vying for our attention these days.
For sure. And the embedded process model, it focuses on the role of long-term memory. It says that writing involves constantly retrieving information from your long-term memory, like grammar rules, vocabulary, and background knowledge about your topic.
So it's not just about holding information in your working memory, it's about accessing the vast stores of information in your long-term memory.
Exactly. And this model helps explain why it's so much easier to remember and write down a sentence that makes sense compared to a random list of words. It's because the meaningful sentence taps into your existing knowledge.
Okay, so that's reading and writing. Let's move on to another area where working memory is really important, second language learning.
Right. And for this one, the multi-component model really highlights the role of the phonological loop. It's seen as crucial for acquiring new vocabulary because you need to hold on to the sounds of the new words and link them to their meanings.
So it's about that ability to hear and repeat new sounds.
Yeah, that's important. And studies have shown that disrupting the phonological loop, like having people repeat a simple sound while they're trying to learn new words, makes it harder for them to learn.
Interesting. So what do the other models have to say about second language learning?
The attentional control model, as you might expect, emphasizes the importance of attention.
Paying attention to those new sounds and grammar rules.
Right. And also being able to notice and use feedback on your errors. People with better attentional control, they're better at incorporating feedback and improving their language skills.
Makes sense. And what about the embedded process model?
Well, this model emphasizes the importance of your long-term memory, specifically your knowledge of your native language and any existing knowledge of the second language. It's interesting, right? Because you can usually recall information much better in your native language.
Yeah, for sure.
And that highlights the power of that well-established long-term knowledge. So, difficulties in learning a new language might not be due to a problem with the phonological loop itself, but rather a weaker activation of relevant linguistic knowledge in your long-term memory.
Okay, so each model offers a slightly different take on language learning. Let's switch gears and talk about math, another area where working memory is super important.
Yeah, and the multi-component model proposes that both the verbal and the executive components of working memory are involved in math. The phonological loop is used for storing numbers, especially when you're doing mental calculations.
Okay, I can see that.
And the visual spatial sketchpad is involved in visualizing problems, like if you're working with geometric shapes. And the central executive is super important for managing the steps in a calculation, like keeping track of carries and borrows in arithmetic.
So it's like having a mental whiteboard where you're working through the problem step by step.
Yeah, that's a good way to picture it. But what's interesting is that the attentional control model suggests that it's not just about holding numbers in mind, it's about being able to focus on the relevant information and ignore distractions.
So it's that mental spotlight again, making sure you're paying attention to the right parts of the problem.
Exactly. And research has shown that students who have trouble with attention often do better in math when the important information is visually highlighted. It helps them focus their working memory.
That's a good tip for anyone who struggles with math. Highlight the important stuff.
And the embedded process model, it emphasizes the role of long-term memory in math. It says that difficulties in math might arise from an inability to access and apply previously learned problem-solving strategies and math facts.
So it's not just about calculating, it's about knowing what tools to use and how to use them.
Exactly. Okay, so we've talked about reading, writing, language learning, and math. Let's wrap up with one more area, multimedia learning.
Which is basically how we learn from things like videos, presentations, websites, all those things that combine words and images.
Right. And the multi-component model has been really influential in theories of multimedia learning. These theories often propose that we have separate visual and auditory channels in our working memory, and each channel has a limited capacity.
Okay, so you can only process so much information visually and so much information auditorily at the same time.
Exactly. And so good multimedia design tries to avoid overloading either channel. For example, presenting information as narration instead of text can reduce the load on the visual channel.
That's a good tip for anyone who creates presentations.
For sure. Now, the attentional control model suggests that some of the principles of multimedia learning might be better explained by attentional limitations rather than separate channels.
So instead of thinking about two separate buckets, we should be thinking about how much attention we can allocate.
Right. For example, the split attention principle, which says that it's harder to learn when you have to look at different visual sources, like a diagram in a text box. That might be because it's too demanding on your attention.
Okay, that makes sense.
And the redundancy principle, which says that sometimes adding text and narration can actually hurt learning, that might be because it disrupts your attention.
Interesting. What about the embedded process model? How does that view multimedia learning?
It emphasizes the importance of activating the relevant long-term memory representations when you're learning from multimedia. It suggests that using different modalities, like visuals and audio, can help reduce interference in your long-term memory, making it easier to integrate new information.
Okay, so using multiple modalities can actually make it easier to connect new information to what you already know.
Exactly. The article also briefly mentions some other models of working memory, like the temporal context model and dual component models, which offer additional insights into how memory works, but
Mhm.
maybe don't have as many direct applications in education yet.
Right, but they're still important pieces of the puzzle. So, as we wrap up our deep dive into working memory, it's clear that there's a lot more to it than just the traditional view of short-term storage.
Absolutely. The attentional control model and the embedded process model offer really valuable perspectives that highlight the crucial roles of attention and long-term memory.
And they can help us understand why learning can be challenging for some people and how we can support them better.
Right. It's not just about how much information you can hold in your mind. It's about how well you can focus, how you manage distractions, and how you connect new information to what you already know.
Exactly. So, as you think about your own learning experiences, which of these perspectives resonates with you the most?
Do you tend to struggle with focus? Do you find it easy to connect new information to your existing knowledge? Thinking about these different aspects of working memory can give you some valuable insights into how you learn best.
And maybe even inspire you to explore some of these alternative models further.
Yeah, see what new discoveries you can make about the amazing world of memory.